I never thought I wanted to be a teacher until I started teaching. About, what is it now, 7 years ago, I graduated from Bethel University with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. What I wanted to do at the time, what I felt like my educational path was pushing me towards, was public policy research. I was incredibly curious and fascinated by and passionate about clean energy policy. It was something that, since my sophomore year of college, had piqued my interest, and I had a firm belief that this was bubbling up and about to explode and become the biggest policy area in the country and in the world. Shortly after I graduated from Bethel, I took a fellowship in Kosovo, over in Europe, working on clean energy solutions in a country that was having rolling blackouts, that was relying on very dirty fuel, and had a government that was incredibly young. It was a government that, in the aftermath of the Serbian War, was dealing with issues of corruption, lack of funds. People were going hungry. There's a lot of huge issues going on in Kosovo, and in my 21, 22-year-old idealistic mind, I thought, yes, that is the perfect place for me to begin. Shortly after I arrived in Kosovo, the bubble and fizz of it all started to fade. I realized that there were all these different hard walls around this thing that I felt was so inspiring, around this thing that I thought was going to be the driving force of my life. I realized that I was going to come up against a lot of different obstacles. There's my naivete. I found government officials that decided that they were just going to lie to me in meetings about the state of the country's energy situation. I found people that were completely disinterested in working on energy solutions, and I found myself constantly an outsider. I was an American in a foreign country trying to tell them how they should do their energy work. And overall, after a couple months, the cynicism just kind of settled in my stomach like a rock. I didn't want to go to work. I didn't care anymore about energy policy. I was a minor in college in studio art, and I started hanging out with all the artists in Kosovo. And I didn't really have much of a direction for where I wanted to go. In addition to this, I didn't really have much money. It doesn't pay much doing a fellowship in the poorest country in the world, or poorest country in Europe, I should say. So after half a year, I made the decision to come back to the U.S. and find a job wherever I could, something that would be able to put food on my plate, and start over, try to figure out what I wanted to do next. The first job that I took was the first one that I saw posted. I had a friend at the time who was working in the schools as a paraprofessional, and I saw one that was open in the district where I went to school. So immediately I sent in my application, told them my background and just kind of what skills I felt like I could bring, and they hired me. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but on day one I was placed in a few different classrooms where I sat with students, and I worked them through their math homework and their science labs and their essays. And over time, through that first semester, I realized three important things about myself. One is that despite everything I thought, I really like kids. I didn't think I liked kids. I didn't think I liked teenagers. And very quickly I learned that this was something that they fascinated me. They were really interesting. They reminded me of that time before all my cynicism came in. They still had big dreams about the world. They had big dreams for their lives. And it was just exciting to be a part of that experience with them, of them figuring out who they are, and where they need to improve to get to that next level that they want to reach. Secondly, I realized that I was really good at it. I was really good at connecting with students. I think they liked me, and I had a way that I didn't know I had of just being able to identify the specific areas where they needed help improving in all their courses, where I could help them target and make goals and try to figure out plans with them, and I really enjoyed doing that. And so that for me was like a big light bulb moment. I'm like, okay, this is something you could maybe do. In what capacity that was, I didn't know at the time. The last thing that I learned is, I already knew about myself that I was a lifelong learner, but it kind of just, that epiphany moment came in where I realized I could step into a position here where I am constantly learning new things. As a teacher, that was when I first started thinking about teaching. I thought, okay, I could have a career where I am focused on helping students and engaging with students about all these different ideas about the world, and in the process I can grow along with them. It was just this big moment for me, and immediately the wheels started turning, and I started looking to every teacher I knew for feedback, for information, for guidance, as I was deciding whether or not I was going to go back to school to get my teaching license. So that's what I did. I went to these different teachers, I shadowed them, I talked with them, I sat down with them and I said, look, I know this is really hard work. I know that it's often thankless. I know that, it's not all, sharp pencils and fresh blank pages and kids smiling at you. I know that there's a lot that goes into it. So tell me the hardest parts, tell me the best parts. And through those conversations, I was able to figure out and negotiate, what I could tolerate and what was going to bring me a lot of joy. And in the end, I realized that this position was the perfect fit for me. So I met with, after I had decided that I wanted to be a teacher, the next step was figuring out, okay, well, what do I want to teach? I still had a lot of residue from the Kosovo experience, and I wasn't interested in teaching, as much as I loved history, I wasn't interested in teaching the same stories over and over again. I wasn't interested in repeating the same thing over and over again, and that is an unfair assumption to place on social studies teachers, but that was my mindset at the time. What I did know that I loved, my second passion, something that was very near and dear to my heart, was literature. I wanted to read Shakespeare. I wanted to, in the English classes that I worked with students in, those were the most powerful conversations I had, was with students talking about To Kill a Mockingbird, with students talking about Slaughterhouse-Five, with sitting down with kids and working through, the writer's craft, and how to get better at communicating, and how do we connect these deeper themes in literature to our own lives, and what do they teach us about our lives. So I sat down with my uncle, who's a former teacher of the year in Minnesota, and I said, look, what I'm looking at right now is I have my undergraduate transcripts and they're missing a lot of what I would need to become an English language arts teacher. If I went back to school, it would be much more quick if I just did social studies. I have the background in it, I have the credits, I can do that. But I'm not sure that's where my heart is anymore. In response, my uncle said, don't teach something you're not passionate about, because the kids will know. The kids will know if this is something that doesn't keep you up at night, if this isn't something that you are doing in your free time, if this isn't something that's deeply important to you, the kids are going to know, and then they're not going to be able to connect with it. So I walked out of that meeting with my uncle thinking, he's right. He's right. I believe it. I've seen it in the classroom. I know what I need to do. I know what I want to do. And I know that this is my direction in life. So I enrolled at Hamline University's teaching program. And while I was there, I took classes at different community colleges, trying to collect all the different credits on literature and writing that I could get. And over the last 3 years, I've been able to get to a point where now this is my final class. Public speaking is my final class before I can be officially licensed. And it's just been a wild ride for me. I didn't expect this to happen. I didn't expect that this was the career that I would eventually be holding, but I could not be more grateful and excited for what's to come.